Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the regular city council meeting for Monday, June 16th to order. If those of you in the audience would remember to mute or turn off the ringer on your cell phone, that would be appreciated. First item on our agenda tonight is roll call.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner. Here. Samuelson.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. I will just note that there were a number of meetings and engagements to include the League of Cities listening session, the Chamber EDC board, the change of command of the 741st Missile Squadron, the MPO Executive Director evaluation, which I worked on for the board for the MPO, a Flag Day luncheon, talked with the city attorney regarding rules for personal appearances vis-a-vis the legislation that was recently passed by the legislature. That'll be coming back before the council fairly shortly. Military Affairs Committee, my regular update with the city manager, as well as the MI 8-9 residents meeting. I would at this time like to call our airport director, Jennifer Ekman, forward for a special employee recognition.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to recognize our employee out at the airport, Maria Romanik. Earlier this year, in February, she earned her accreditation with the American Association of Airport Executives. This accreditation is similar to a CPA for an accountant or a PE for an engineer. It proves that she has learned and studied all the aspects of airport management and has earned the opportunity to put the accreditation insignia behind her name, AAE. And so I'd like to present the awards or the plaque that AAA sent to the airport to her at this time.
Okay. Congratulations. And you get a coin,
Yes, thank you.
fashionable shirt with the logo.
Triple E.
Yeah, so
Thank you. Thank
and that concludes the mayor's report. Is there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Next up is the city manager's report. Mr. Stewart.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I guess first and foremost, as is typical, stand for any questions with regards to the city manager report that's included in the packet, available to the council and the public. Not seeing or hearing any questions on that. Just a couple of things. First and foremost, with the recent closing of the Job Corps, we've been requested by Job Corps to provide a letter of support to President Trump, asking that that decision be reconsidered or reversed. And I wanted an opportunity for the council to be able to weigh in tonight on whether or not you wanted to take a position of the city on behalf of that. I know that the city itself has benefited. We've had a couple of interns in the clerk's office coming from Job Corps that have done some good work for us, and just the overall impact that that has to helping employers and youth get into good paying jobs without having to go through the other processes like college and those kinds of things. I think it's a great asset to our community. So anyway, I wanted to give the council an opportunity to potentially take action on that if that's what you would like to do.
Alderman Pittner?
I guess I'll make a motion to direct staff to draft a letter in
Second.
support.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion?
Can I just say, I believe the letter is drafted. It would probably be more appropriate to authorize the city manager to sign
I'll make that
the
motion.
letter.
End my motion to.
Is the second okay?
Yes.
Seconder and the second, okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mark.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to vote no on this, not because I don't appreciate Job Corps, the wonderful people that work and study there, but this is an opportunity under President Trump's leadership to try to begin moving us away from assuming that government solves all of our problems in every facet of life. Job Corps centers and trade schools across the board do a wonderful job of training up people to do lots of important work across our communities and across our country. But at the same time, I think we're better off doing that as often as we can, either through the private sector or through state-led universities, things along those lines. Having this trickle all the way from the federal level all the way down to this, to me, is not quite the right way to have been doing it in the first place. And the fact that we've got an administration that's actually taking an active interest in trying to lean things up, I think it's the wrong point to send that message right now. And that's me personally. Again, I may be the only one up here, but just for me to be consistent in the way that I look at the world, I don't see this as something that's our purview to send.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Olson?
thank you. So as a former teacher, I had a number of students that benefited from attendance at the Job Corps Center. And some of these students had disabilities. Some of them came from dysfunctional households. Some of them just struggled in a typical setting. And Job Corps offered them an opportunity to be, in some cases, earn their GED or their high school diploma. They were trained for well-paying jobs. And I always viewed it as an investment in that young person's life. Without that investment, they likely would have needed further assistance from all the taxpayers for a much longer time, because they likely would have qualified for some affordable housing or some food assistance, or some of them would have ended up incarcerated. And seeing the opportunity that was given to them and that each and every one of them was successful going through that program, I was really heartbroken to see that a pause had taken place. And while I don't know that this letter is going to make much of a difference, I think it's important that we can at least voice it from our community, saying that we saw the benefit of having a Job Corps Center in Minot.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please record your votes.
The motion failed 3-3 with dissents from Blessum, Fuller, and Samuelson.
Okay,
So next item of business, before I get on to probably what everyone was wanting to hear about, and that's the police chief recommendation. I do have Dave, our finance director, although he doesn't have a presentation this evening as we normally would on the second meeting of the month, because we anticipate we'll have plenty of conversation with you with regards to city finances next week in our budget meetings. But he did have an update that he wanted to provide the council briefly this evening.
Finance Director?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a couple of quick items. I put a handout on the dais for each one of you earlier. It's just a couple of the highlights from the annual report. It's the audit report, the governance letter, and then the federal report. And the bottom line is we didn't have any findings in the audit report. It's an unmodified opinion. The governance letter goes into a little detail on some of the changes year over year and explains some of that information. And then with the federal report, there were no findings. They did take a look at our internal controls, and they didn't identify any material weaknesses. And they also took a look at our major federal projects and tested our PFCs at the airport. So about as good as we could have expected for the audit report. The full narrative and all of the financials are available on the city's website. I think that's about 203 pages in total. So it's there for your reading pleasure. And I would take any questions you might have on that at this point before I go on. The second item I have is just for situational awareness for the council and to make sure that there isn't any opposition to this, but I have been asked to be a member of Xcel Energy's Business Advisory Committee. And it's something where there's 3 members from the major cities in North Dakota that participate from each of the major cities on this board. One of the things that they asked for us is to commit to a 3-year term. There are 3 meetings annually. One of them which is in person. The other ones are anticipated to be remotely. And they just ask that we have an open mind and a willingness to learn and be an advocate for Xcel Energy. And with some of the things that we have going on or upcoming in the community, it might be to have some more information on what Xcel does for our community too. So I thought it was a good opportunity. I just wanted to make sure that the council didn't have any opposition to me agreeing to participate in that advisory board.
Seeing
you.
none, I
That's all I
think
have.
we appreciate your letting us know about that and appreciate the Ide Bailey report as well.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the next item would be my recommendation for appointment of police chief. The memo is included in your packet. I will say that in my career, I've had the opportunity to hire and fill a lot of department head positions, including police chiefs and fire chiefs. This has been one of the most difficult decisions I've had to make, because oftentimes what you hope is that a clear candidate rises to the top, and here it was pretty evenly split between Mr. Fry and Mr. Plessis, and about every way I looked at it, it was still pretty evenly split. And I've been on the record previously with regards to my statements, my recommendation, even for the interim chief, that I felt strongly that we needed outside leadership at this time for our department and for our organization. However, that being said, Mr. Plessis has performed admirably and well above expectation over the last several months, even to the point that I considered perhaps walking that statement back. I think both are qualified to be the police chief of our organization. For me, the decision point was a couple of things. First and foremost is I still do lean towards a need for outside leadership and representation at this time for our department. Secondly, kind of came down to personality, an attitude of positivity, someone that's going to help our department heal and connect with our community and our citizens in a positive and meaningful way. We're splitting hairs here. I'm not going to say there's a stark difference when it comes between the 2 candidates on that, but those were the 2 things that kind of led me to making the recommendation of appointing Mr. Fry as our next police chief. I can't speak for Mr. Plessis, but as I state in my memo, I do believe that the 2 of these paired together would be a dynamite combination of leadership for moving our community and our organization forward. And that's my recommendation this evening. I did provide to you, and it's in the packet, a lot of the data and the feedback through that process. But at this point, my recommendation is to appoint Mr. Fry as the police chief for the city of Minot.
Okay, thank you for your recommendation. Is there a motion? Alderman Pittner.
I will move both recommended action items. 1, approve the appointment of Michael Fry as police chief, as well as item number 2, approve directing staff to upgrade an existing captain position to a deputy chief position.
Moved by Paul, second by Mike. Is there a discussion?
My goodness.
Alderman, excuse me, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo a little bit of what Harold said, and Paul and I served on the community leaders group, and Paul can certainly speak for himself, but one of the things that I want to tell the public is how pleased I have been throughout with Captain Plessis's hard work and effort for the department, plus how amazingly well he did in the interview sessions. His command of the subject matter of what the department needs was tremendous. And I think while I believe this is the right path, as Harold just mentioned, the dynamic duo idea, I absolutely love. And so for me, while number one is certainly important in our recommended actions to get a new chief in place, number two may be as important or more important, which is to put a deputy chief in place to recognize what our acting chief has done and what he has to offer going forward. And so I'm proud of this process, and I think it was done well. So Harold, nice work. And I think that we are going to be proud as a city of where this heads.
Further discussion? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Janser. Again, I'll echo Mike's comments. I was lucky enough to sit on the selection committee and the interview panel. And again, very pleased with the process. I can tell how much of a struggle this is for Harold, and that's a good problem to have when you've got two great candidates that have risen to the top. It's not an easy decision. It's not a fun decision to have to pick one or the other. But again, I believe that both of these individuals have a lot to offer this department. I believe I'm gonna steal a quote from Chief Kelly, who was also on the panel. This feels like hope. This feels like hope for this department, for our city, for our community moving forward. This scenario. So again, I'm pleased. It's one of those things you think about this, and again, I think that's part of this process. This is the benefit of being a part of this process. Not only whether you're on the panel or whether you're a part of the council, is that you watch the interviews, you're a part of the interviews, and you think about it when you go home. You think about it when you wake up. How did that go? What did they say here? You know, this resonated with me. And then you talk with other members of the community, and it's like, what did you think of this person? What did you think of that person? And again, it was resounding the quality that we had in candidates. And again, I think one way or the other, I think Mike and I had talked about this. We'd be pleased either way, no matter how this would have ended up. But again, I believe this is the right decision moving forward for Minot and the community and the organization.
Any further discussion? Alderman Olson.
Thank you. So I did not sit on any of the interview committees, but I did attend the forum in the evening when all of the candidates had the opportunity to answer some questions and meet people from the community. And I was very pleased with all three, quite honestly. I too agree that this would have been a very difficult decision. I believe that Michael Fry will be a very good chief. He will be welcomed and he will be supported. I just have to acknowledge again that the department in their survey certainly were more in favor of having Captain Plessis as their chief. And I think that just speaks volumes in the fact that he was able to take a department in a very, very difficult and challenging time and lead them successfully with compassion, with integrity. And having him now in this deputy chief position, I think is so vital, because it is a department that does have hope, that does want to grow. And I hope that they can put the support behind Chief Fry, but working together, I hold out hope. But I certainly want to always keep them in the forefront, because it's been a department that has had a lot of challenges in last year. And up here on the dais, we can be the first ones to help them take those next steps forward.
Anything further? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please record your votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
Thank you all very much. Moving along, item 5. Item 5.2 is a public hearing, case number 2025-20, Lichty Homes, 7th edition, preliminary plat, zoning map, and amendment and annexation. This is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak for or against this item is invited to come to the podium. Anybody wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. One last time, anybody willing to speak to the Lichty Homes 7th edition item, please come forward. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Make a motion to close the public hearing and approve as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, record your votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
Next item is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the CDBG fiscal year 2025 action plan. This is about our CDBG allotment and what we do with it. Anybody wishing to speak to this item, please step forward. Anybody wish to speak about the CDBG fiscal year 2025 action plan? Last time, seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we close the public hearing and authorize staff to submit the fiscal year 2025 action plan to HUD.
Seconded by Alderman Samuelson. Any discussion? Alderman Blessam?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, please. So I apologize, Chris, if I couldn't find it, I tried. I couldn't find detail in the plan that talks about what we're doing. I saw feedback from a couple different organizations. Is the breakdown of what we're actually doing with the funds in there? Or is that another step still?
Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessam. So what we've done is in the plan, and I can email it to you. We've taken the public comments that the nonprofits and our public hearing has had, and we have identified some areas in which we can devote funding to. Now, keep in mind there are different areas of funding. There's administration, there is the public service, and then there's the housing section of it too. So there's three different buckets of money that can be allocated towards activities. And some of them that we have identified is transportation, with some of them, helping out with rent, even though we can't do direct rental, home buyer assistance. So those are some of the activities that we will be working on to get funding for. And we've identified some nonprofits already that are willing to have those programs and that we can assist with those.
Okay, so if I can continue, so just one last question. At some point, is there a roster of exactly what we're spending that the council approves? Is that the final step?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Janser and Alderman Blessam, yes. Before we can allocate money, we will be bringing subrecipient agreements to council for their approval, along with the explanation of what the program is and how much money is allocated towards that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Chris while he's here? Seeing none, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, it's time to vote. Please record your votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
Next item is 6.2, and that is a public hearing on conditional approval of Renaissance Zone case number M109, a request by Carl Clementson for a 5-year property tax benefit for the rehabilitation of a commercial property located at 111 First Street Southeast. This is a public hearing on that request. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Public hearing on the Renaissance Zone case number M109. Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, what are the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and approve as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your votes.
The motion passed 5-1 with dissent from Alderman Samuelson.
All right. Moving on to section 7. These are the consent items. And I've been asked to pull items 7.7 and 7.13. Are there any other items that anybody would like to have pulled? Anybody in the audience here to speak on any of these items that haven't been pulled? If you are, now is the time to let us know so that we can pull it and you can have your say. All right, seeing none, what are the wishes of the council?
I'll move the remaining items.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that the remaining items be be passed. Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
All right, very well. That takes us to item 7.7. This is the paratransit service agreement with Service Basin Transportation and a budget amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Olson. Alderman Blessam, I think you pulled this
Yep,
item.
yeah, please, Brian, if you would. So I pulled this item. It's related to the item we had last one, this another transit item, and we're being asked to put an additional set of funds now into the paratransit side of the service. So I asked Brian to come and just give us a little bit of an update on that, and then Brian also on the data collection that we're going to be doing across both programs, if you wouldn't mind.
Copy. Acting Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessam. So kind of a rundown of the paratransit funds that we're actually requesting at this time, tie back to additional requests and requirements stemming from the urban designation. The biggest issue we ran into this year with going from a rural to an urban designation is the effects that it had on Service Basin Transit to go ahead and provide paratransit service for us at a discounted cost due to the cost savings we were receiving from demand response system and kind of duplicative effort that was happening at that time. With the new transition, it requires the city now to provide additional federal updates as far as reporting procedures to ensure that we're actually capturing the right data for federal requirements, ensuring that our funding is not jeopardized. So of the $107,000 that's being asked for today, there is absolutely zero cost share to the city that's going to be seen. We are seeing the first 80% of it is going to be part of federal funding requirements, and then the remaining 20% is actually coming from Senate Bill 2254 biennial allocation to the city, covering the match portion of it. As far as reporting requirements goes, we're asking Service Basin Transit to provide us total transit, paratransit ridership to ensure that we have an accurate accounting for paratransit riders that are actually on board Service Basin, separating them out from the demand response side as well. Beyond that, we're looking for boardings per revenue hour, paratransit revenue hours per month, and then total number of miles driven as well.
Thank you. So if I can continue.
Continue.
And Brian, I don't have anything else, I guess, unless someone else has a question.
No, I'm okay.
All right, thank you, Brian. So to continue the thought from the last meeting, I mean, this is an additional spend. So this is on top of the 300 that we were asked at the last meeting. We're hoping that's more like 260-ish. But again, these funds are really adding up. And while the designation of urban had other things that went along with it that were good, the only hope we have coming out the back end of this is the TDP, the Transit Development Plan that's coming, that somehow we come up with a plan that functions at a price that's similar to where we've been. Because right now, but our best hope is hoping that the state somehow bails us out. And as I've said repeatedly, the state bailing us out is the exact same people paying the bill, just a different way. So as good stewards of this, we need to come up with a plan for transit that's workable at the price that makes sense. But again, I'll vote yes. I don't know that we have a better option at this point.
Any other discussion by the council? Alderman Samuelson.
So Brian, I might have a question that you need to answer. Sorry. So in the memo, it talks about 3 ADA accessible vans that we provide to service-based transportation. Do we provide those to them now?
Sir, for that, I'll actually turn it over to Brian Horinka. I believe he can better talk about logistics.
Mayor Janser, Alderman Samuelson, yes, we do provide them. We have from the original onset of the original agreement with Service Basin Transit back in, I believe, 2008. This has been something that was done every year. We have always purchased and maintained the 3 handicap accessible vans that they use then to help provide that paratransit service. We also pick up all the fueling costs, maintenance costs, and insurance costs that go along with those 3. So that has not changed from the very first agreement that we made with them 15, 16 years ago.
So if I could then, so do they use that just for the paratransit, or do they use that for their other door-to-door pickup?
Mayor Janser, Alderman Samuelson, it is predominantly used for the paratransit, but it is allowable if there is no paratransit need at that time. It is allowable for them to use them for other transportation services by federal regulation as well.
So if I could, where is that in the budget, or how is it in the budget? Is it just in transportation?
Mayor Janser, Alderman Samuelson, yes, when it comes time to replace those vans, those are just brought forth as a capital request every year, and they also do fall into the same 85-15 federal funding percentages when it comes time to replace those vans. So the federal government does pay for 85% of those replacement costs, with us picking up a 15% cost share once those do need replaced.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could.
Go ahead, Scott.
The reason why I ask those questions is when we look at the total funding that we've been talking about for Service Basin, those are 3 items I didn't know that we provided. So there's 3 more. I mean, that's more on the budget for the door-to-door and the paratransit that is beyond the amount that we're looking at. So I just wanted to bring that up because it, and plus we're paying for the maintenance and the fueling on those vehicles too. So it's not just the 300,000 and the 107.
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessum.
I think one of the things with that point, I guess it never would have occurred to me that these vans were available for their use for other transit customers, which, again, we're meeting a need in the city. I don't doubt that for a second, but it does make me think that when we come to that point where we've got to replace these vehicles, that we look at whether that fits under how this plan should work. And I'm sure somewhere up in the federal transit world, there's a requirement that we have to hold these vans and how this is all done. But I would hope that there's some way for us to look at this logically to make sure that this is making sense, because it sure would seem to make sense that Service Basin would hold these vehicles long-term if they're the ones providing the rides. But again, and Brian, you can sure comment to that if I'm guessing there's a federal requirement in here somewhere.
Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessum, to my knowledge, there is no federal requirement that we provide those vans to them. That's something that was done before my time as transit superintendent, and it was just continued on through all the subsequent agreements every year. They also use their vans, their buses, the things that they own to provide the paratransit service in addition to just our 3 vans. So all that service is mostly commingled together. So we're getting as much as we're giving. They're not just restricting paratransit rides to the 3 vans that we give them. There are certain wheelchairs, certain things that they cannot actually provide service to using a van where they do need a bus. So they provide those services. It's just a additional asset that we provide them to help them with the service to work together as one. At the end of the day, we're all providing that service, and that's it's worked very well over the years.
Can I get a clarification of what's been said here with regard to the 80-20 or 85-15, whatever, split on these funds? So the funds that we're looking at in this motion, is any of that supported by federal or not?
Mayor Janser, yes, absolutely. Separate, these vans that's just part of the agreement. We're not asking for any money, any funds, anything to deal with these 3 assets in this motion. That's just something we've always provided to them, and we will, according to this agreement, continue to provide to them and replace on an as-needed basis. But currently, we are not in need of replacing one of those 3 vans. That's just things we already have that has been being used. As far as the funding that is a part of this particular memo, that is for the $107,000 to give them to operate the paratransit service for us. 80% of that will be funded by the federal government under the Section 5307 grants that we're now applying for. The other 20% would be local match, but thanks to Senate Bill 2254 that was approved and signed, we have $301,000 available to us for paratransit services, so we can pull from that pot of money from the state to cover that 20% match. So essentially, that 107 isn't any city dollars.
Okay, that's the clarification I wanted, because it seemed to me that it was being said that we were coming up with another $107,000, and that is not the case. So I wanted to make sure that that's.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Mayor, we are saving $20,000 because at the beginning of this budget year, we had $40,000 set aside for the contract with Service Base and the current one. We started out 6 months at $20,000. We're continuing this now with this following 6 months at the 107, but the 20 that we would have paid for out of our pocket is now coming from the state. So we're actually going to see a plus up of $20,000 in our transit budget.
20 grand in found money is always good, right?
That's
If I could, Mark.
Alderman Blessing.
It's not found money. It doesn't, I mean, unless you consider the fact that the federal government prints it, okay, which I guess we all agree that that is the case. In that case, it sort of is found money, but that's why we pay, $7 for a dozen eggs. That's where inflation comes from, is printing money. So this is not found money. It is $107,000 that was not spent before this year. It is real money that's going to be expended. It's taxpayer money, whether it comes through the federal government, through the state government, or through our own coffers. And we cannot lose sight of that. The fact that it doesn't impact our general fund or our transit funds, fine. I get why that's attractive to some people, but I owe every taxpayer our due diligence, not just the ones that end up paying city dollars.
Mr. Mayor.
Before I call on you, let me just say, I was speaking with respect to our budget. That was it. Nothing further than that. Alderman Fuller.
Brian, just real quick, I mean, since we're talking about it, how often do we have to replace those paratransit vans? I mean, since you've been doing it.
Mayor Janser, Alderman Fuller, we used to replace them about every 3 to 4 years. They were getting more use back then. They have a life expectancy of 4 years and 100,000 miles on them. When we hit that 100,000 mile mark, we would then ask for a replacement. Over the past few years, we have not put quite as many miles on them, and we've put a little more into maintaining on them. So we've been getting 5, 6 years out of them. I don't know what year models we have in our fleet currently right now. I would suspect we'll be looking to replace at least one of them in the 2027 budget. I'm going to say at that time, though, we can get an 85% grant to cover the cost, or at least assist with covering the cost of replacing those.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's time to vote. Please mark your ballots.
The motion passed unanimously.
takes us to item 7.13, which is the renewal of the recycling transport services. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessam.
Yep. Thanks, Jason. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of a summary. It sounded in the memo like the dollars are actually a little bit favorable right now, so I thought it'd be good to hear some of that. And the nice thing is we're renewing at the prior terms, which I think is favorable to us in terms of fuel and things like that, so.
Sure. Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessam. So if you all remember back, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of recycling. July 17th will be 2 full years. Going into recycling, there are we knew a lot of the costs. We didn't know what some of those rebates coming back were. It's a cyclical market. Markets go up, markets go down. So when we got into recycling 2 years ago, we were paying about $77 a ton to have a contractor in Minneapolis process our material. And then we were getting back about $34 a ton. So over the course of the last 2 years, that number has gradually come up. So last month, we got $145 a ton. So we're netting out the processing costs, and then we're getting the remainder back in the form of a check, which then we use to offset the trucking. And like you said, we entered into an agreement with One Call Septic. We own the trailers. They take the trailers to Minneapolis for us. They bid a number 2 years ago, and they're fine continuing. So we're going to extend that by 1 year at the same terms and conditions.
Any questions for Jason? Go ahead, Alderman Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, real quick, like I saw the rebate checks, how much have we got back this year? Just rough numbers. If you had to, you should have asked me that like an hour ago. You can answer me later if you need to.
Yeah, let me get you back. I'll tell you in an email.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Jason, before you go, can you talk a little bit about how that gets affected if there's suddenly more usage? I think we've been relatively steady in what we're collecting. Just watching the numbers fly by on Facebook, it looks like it's relatively steady. Can you talk about what happens in the system if usage were to drop by 15 or 20%, and also if it were to go up? Financially, are there good or bad guys in either direction?
Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessam, there is a portion of your rate that recycling, your fees cover some of the cost of recycling. So yeah, if participation would for some reason drop, then that would hinder the program financially on the income side.
So if I can continue, so it would hinder it on the rebate side, but it would also lower the costs, right? So is that I guess that's what I'm getting at, is lowering participation a good guy or a bad guy at this point?
I would probably have to crunch numbers because, like you said, it affects it in like 3 or 4 different places. We're not paying to process as much, but then we're not getting a rebate on as much, and then we're not collecting as much. So yeah, I'd have to run that out and just kind of see what it would look like if 2,000 people dropped out of the program or whatever.
And if I can continue with that, and is it, again, I think you've talked along the way about, just some rate thoughts, right? And so there's some things, I would assume recycling would be an overall part of the rate picture as we continue to go forward. And so certainly we'd have to keep those in mind, whether I think we're at 264, whatever the number ended up being after last year's budget cycle, but we have to continue to consider that as we go forward and what this is costing, right? Because the break-even point comes from the fee to the people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jason, have we gained any, has the number of households participating gone up, down, or stayed about the same?
Mayor Janser, it's gone up. If you remember back when we started the program, there was an initial 3-month opt-out period, and then after that, any new sales or people that have built new houses, their recycling is part of their sanitation bill. So just through that process, we've added a few hundred probably to the collection rolls.
Okay, and total collection households is what, in the neighborhood of
Just over 10,000.
10,000? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, those are good numbers.
13,000 total sanitation customers. So yeah, we're
we're close to almost, 80% participation probably.
Pretty high percentage of participation, so, okay. Any other questions for Jason? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Our finance director is approaching with his cell phone.
So far, year to date, we have received $28,936 from DEMCON, and that is for the rebates through April.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, let's vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
All right. That takes us to section 8, which is our action items. Item 8.1 is a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant authorization. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson.
Second.
Second by Alderman Fuller. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessam?
Could I ask just a clarification, Lance, if you don't mind? So in the memo, Lance, in the recommendation detail, I just want to clarify the language because it didn't catch me right. I think what it's saying, the engineering department would consult the project, meaning you'll put it out to a consultant to perform the work. Am I reading that correctly?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessing, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not something that would be intended to be handled by your staff, is the
It's,
point?
it's just too big. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anything else for Lance? Seeing none, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, if I could.
Alderman Blessam.
This is one, I feel like we've got a great team in Lance's office. I think Stefan does a wonderful job. It talks about identifying new places where things like roundabouts can go in and streetlights can go up. And I think we've got a fabulous team that does that. For me, this just doesn't make the grade. We've talked about having consultants come in for specific things. To me, this isn't one of those that hits in the constraints that we have today. So I'll be a no on this.
Any further discussion? No further discussion, then it's time to vote. Please cast your vote.
The motion failed 3-3 with dissents from Blessam, Fuller, and Samuelson.
Okay, motion fails. Item 8.2 is the airport terminal public address upgrades. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion. Alderman Blessam.
Jennifer, if you don't mind. From everything that I've read here, it sounds like this is something we got to get done. Can you talk a little bit about what's actually going on with the system and why we would see this in a building that I think many in the community would still think is new? And so
Yeah.
I know we've got other issues that come up too, but I thought I'd give you a chance to make sure we understood.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is technology-based, so it is a computer system, and speakers and intercom system that is used inside the terminal. It provides required TSA announcements, such as, what you're allowed to take onto the airplane, no parking in front of the terminal. It also allows our airlines to make their announcements, such as, we're boarding now at gate 3 or whatever it may be. So those two things are all combined. It also provides the opportunity to do what we call visual paging for our ADA customers with hearing impairments. So it makes that available to them. So all those things put together, our current system is now 10 years old. And like any technology, 10 years old technology tends to be ancient in the world of technology. We have earlier this year, when There was some slight modifications to our there was new scanning equipment put up in the checkpoint. We were unable to, for lack of a better term, make the new messaging stick that you no longer had to take out your liquids from your bags. You didn't have to take out your electronics. It took us months to get that to go away because of the age of the equipment and the age of the system. The current product that we use is Atlas IED, and it is not able to support the current equipment we have at the airport. So their recommendation was to do an upgrade. Because of the cost of the upgrade, we were going to do it kind of a third at a time over the course of 3 years. When we submitted this to the North Dakota Aeronautics Commission, they had recommended that we see if there was a discount if we did it all in 1 year. There was I believe 3%, maybe 5% discount to do the total changeover all at once. And so the North Dakota Aeronautics Commission decided to award us a larger request for grant funding than we had larger grant funding for to pay for the cost of the upgrade.
So if I can continue. So Jennifer, is it safe to say we should expect another replacement of this system down the road? I mean, the thing that I'm not quite getting in this whole thing is 2015, any technology isn't ancient to me, especially this type. This isn't, we're not talking, what's running.
It's a DOS-based program in the background that's running that system, so it is.
So
very
when we bought it in 2015, we bought a 1989 based system.
I wasn't here then.
I agree.
Apparently
I understand.
we did.
But I mean that's kind of what we're talking about there. But
Right.
like I said, I don't know that we have much of a choice here. But I maybe just channeling a little of the public on having to
Right.
fix stuff on a relatively new facility.
Right,
So.
I agree. I mean, it's basically the most complicated part is the computer system that kind of runs the background part of it, and it was DOS-based, and just finding the right file to delete and having it stick. I believe Jessica, who's our airport security coordinator, tried to update certain announcements because TSA requirements multiple times over multiple months, and it would go away, it would be fine, and then about 2-3 weeks later, all of a sudden that message would pop up again. So it's been a very, very much a challenging system to work with.
City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, if I may kind of respond a little bit to Alderman Blessum's question, and this has been a concern that I've had since coming in. Our airport terminal is fairly new, looks beautiful, but as we've talked about in budget tours in previous years and those kinds of things, it was built to look pretty, not necessarily functional. And so we're going to continue to have some of these challenges that in some of the areas where they probably should have invested money in and didn't to make it look pretty, we have to fix that now. And unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in. And some of our existing staff here now aren't here when helping with that design and making those decisions, but we're here to help guide the organization, the community through rectifying those things going forward. And so this continues to be a balance that we try to walk as we continue to move forward with the directive of council to try and minimize spending. But we're trying to fix some of these things to keep it operational as well as looking pretty.
Any other questions for Jennifer? All right, seeing none, any further discussion by the council? Seeing none, let's record our votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
That takes us to item 8.3, the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Phase VE1, award of bid for the Velva Bridge replacement. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Pittner,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Olson. Any discussion?
Mark?
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I know we have to do this. I know it's part of the flood control and being a good neighbor. But here we are again. The bridge came in 18% over budget. I just am going to continue to question how we can be so far off on our estimates before we go out and ask for these bids. You know, we're at $1.5 billion right now in flood control, and if this keeps happening, it's going to be $2 billion. Our share has risen from $350 million to $525 million. It could be $700 million plus by the time this is all said and done. As a local community, it's a lot of money to be spending on flood control. Again, I know we need it, but boy, prices aren't helping.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
That motion carried. We go to 8.4, which is a ordinance, and I believe this is actually a sort of a follow-up to a previously passed motion that needed this piece added, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, this was approved on first reading in April, and it was administrative error on my part not to get this placed on second reading when the budget amendment went through as well.
You could have just said we needed to do it tonight.
Well, I admit to my errors.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Is there a motion?
I'll move the approval.
Moved by Alderman Blessum, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, cast your ballots or whatever. Or opposed, whatever.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay. That brings us to item number 9, which is personal appearances. We have guidelines that we use for this, using Robert's Rules of Order as our guide. Everyone should remember that public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to inform the governing body about their views. The meeting in which public comments are allowed is still run by the governing body with clear, concise guidelines in place. The chair will determine if the comments are outside of the purview of this meeting. Unless otherwise specified, public comment is considered a one-way communication. It is not intended to serve as a debate or a question and answer period. For tonight's meeting, public comment from any one person is limited to 5 minutes. A stopwatch is viewable on the screens. If the governing body wishes to extend the time a speaker is given, an affirmative vote must be taken. A speaker's time may not be yielded to another speaker. The unused time from any speaker is transferred back to the governing body. Comments should be related to a topic that falls under the authority of this governing body. Campaigning for any political office or specific candidate is not acceptable. Comments with the same sentiment or belief should be kept concise to allow for the meeting to move forward efficiently. We are in public appearances. Anyone who wishes to address the council, please step forward. Anyone who wishes to address the council, please come forward at this time.
Good evening. My name is Josiah Royce. I'm glad I made it just in time. I was in Bismarck today. And before I get too far into it, I'd like to tell you why. So I was in court on behalf of a exhibition driving charge. Now, a lot of people have been asking me lately, as I've been making a lot of fuss about constitutional law, common law, things like that. So the charge today that I was there to debate in court in Bismarck was exhibition driving. Now, when this took place, I asked the cop what on earth he's referring to. He was a Bismarck PD. And he said excessive engine noise from me accelerating amidst busy traffic when a lane opened up, and I went from idle speed into that lane and just accelerated, didn't squawk the tires, didn't spin the wheels or anything, just accelerating up to normal speed. That's the sort of thing that I'm referring to. A lot of people keep on asking me, like, what? You want to get rid of law enforcement? And I don't understand how people come to that conclusion based on the things I've been saying in interviews, based on things I've been saying in front of you all here. I keep on promoting the constitutional sheriff movement, and apparently I do need to specify to those who don't understand that the sheriff's department is law enforcement, and they enforce laws, and it would not be chaos. The things I'm proposing, I won't suck up time here because you guys have heard me with my propositions before. The things I'm proposing would not abolish law enforcement, and it wouldn't be chaos and vigilantism, these things that I'm being accused of promoting. So first off, that's just silly. I'm against unconstitutional law enforcement. I'm against unreasonable enforcement. Excessive engine noise, when my vehicle's engine is actually quieter than the decibel noise of the passing traffic around me, is ridiculous. Exhibition driving is the sort of thing that you'd get when you're out street racing or doing donuts in a parking lot and things like that, and it's going to drive my insurance rates up. So of course I'm fighting it in court. But my point is, this is the sort of ridiculous stuff that we've come to from our supposed public servants that I'm pushing back against, because these are not things that harm the community. These are not things, this is somebody's petty, subjective opinion that's being forced on me because he has a badge and I don't. So just to clarify, I'm against the excessive enforcement that we have. Secondly, in promoting the constitutional sheriff's movement, the sort of thing that I've been indicating about problems with the Minot PD, one of them, even before this whole special election was scheduled, I was having a debate on this very topic of what sort of things should be enforced and not on Instagram, on some page that had nothing to do with North Dakota or Minot. And this guy was engaging with me in argument, and then he thought he was going to land the ace in the hole by saying, well, I'm Minot PD. And I said, that doesn't change the validity of the argument at all, dude. But anyway, he got upset, and then he said, I'm looking forward to the video footage of your next arrest and the photos of you in the morgue with bullet holes in your chest. That's the sort of engagement I'm receiving from people who claim to be Minot PD. And whether he is or not, I don't know, I took screenshots of the whole thing, but the point I'm trying to indicate here is that we have these issues, and look at the hostility when I'm just trying to promote constitutional law, trying to promote old common law, trying to go back to the way things were. And that's the kind of hostility that I'm being faced with. So it's no wonder that a lot of people are afraid to come to you guys with these things, or to report it at all. Furthermore, I was having a conversation with a Minot resident whose father was on his way to buy a used vehicle, had $20,000 cash in the vehicle. He got pulled over on the way. Now the police seized that cash, saying that it was suspicious. They think it might be drug money or something. Come on, guys, this is legal tender. Our cash is legal tender, and now that alone is under suspicion, and of course it was seized from him. It took him almost as much money as that 20 grand to get it back with a lawyer. Same thing happened to my little brother, trying to drive and buy a car himself. $8,000 in the center console. Now that's suspicious. Now we're going to search the vehicle. So I know I'm pretty much out of time here. Didn't feel like 5 minutes, but the point is, people are trying to insinuate some terrible things about things that I've said that are just not true, and it's utter chaos. May I have one more minute to finish?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
No. I was a no.
Okay.
Do we have to use our little machine?
No, if there was 4-2, then it's a passing from,
Yes.
yep.
Always yes.
42 in favor.
All
Yep.
in favor, okay. Motion carried. You have your additional minute.
Thank you very much. Also, I just wanted to clarify, as I was accused also in a recent interview with my opponent, Mr. Fuller, claiming that the last time here, when I spoke, that I shouted him down. I think you could probably look back at that footage and find that I did not shout you down. I've never shouted into this microphone. There's no need. The microphone's pretty good on its own. And furthermore, to call that this special election is ridiculous, to say that it is a waste of time and it's a waste of money, I'd like to remind you that that is the people's voice you're speaking of. That is the will of the people that you're referring to as a irritating and frustrating waste. I'd like to remind you of that. And furthermore, on the earlier topic, I got 30 seconds left and I forgot what I was going to go with that. Oh yeah, you guys heard about this terrible murder in Minnesota. Minnesota legislator killed by somebody in a police uniform. So this kind of just goes to my point of like, we need more individual responsibility and care, because you can't just trust somebody because I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Remember Ronald Reagan talked to us about that. So it's like these are things that we should not take lightly. And that's why, yes, I'm promoting constitutional law enforcement. I'm promoting the constitutional sheriff. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, I'd prefer that you not applaud, because I don't want boos either when somebody disagrees. So if you could just not do that. If you like what the speaker has to say, you can certainly tell them that. Sure. We're in personal appearances. Anybody else wish to address the council? Personal appearances.
What are your rules about donating your time to somebody else? Well, I think some of these people that come up here maybe could use a minute or two longer because they're saying really good stuff, but among other things, there's just one R in my last name, thank you. And to get down to it, some of the stuff I wanted to ask earlier, I got told by a veteran who I'm giving rides to that the Source River Basin bus will go ahead and give rides to perfectly able-bodied veterans for free, but those of us who can't pass the eugenics test to get in the armed forces basically have to pay extra, not only in taxes, but we have to pay the bus fare too, and that kind of didn't seem right. And I wanted to ask, is there a possibility that you might want to consider doing some more equitable fees? Because it seems to me that an able-bodied veteran that leaves the service in the best shape of his life should not be paying less than somebody like a single parent with 4 minor children, or somebody who's survived to the age of 96 and can't even walk and can barely shuffle. I mean, it seems to me that discussion didn't even happen when it was talked about disabilities, and I wanted to see to it that that kind of thinking was brought in. Some of the other stuff I've also had to deal with, and I wanted to ask you if I could get some emails on this. I want to know, has it even been in the discussion with the new police chief about better study of law, not just on basic things like memorandum of understanding and jurisdiction, but stuff like the fact that we, the public, should have the right to not only get the identity of anyone presenting themselves as law enforcement personnel, but also to be able to call into dispatch, verify their identity, and report any suspicious behavior if there's not an emergency situation. We should not have to deal with situations where somebody says, I'm a police officer, and if you don't comply immediately, I'm just going to grab you and assault you in a non-emergency situation. I shouldn't have to deal with stuff where I go ahead and do a perfectly legal thing like recording a police raid and from where I live, and have cases of where they're coming back to the person that's running it and threatening them if I don't quote that to kick me, telling them to kick me out if I don't quote unquote delete the footage, like what happened last year. We're getting stuff like this with really bad behavior from people that are basically wearing the uniform. And we're also getting situations like the murder in Minnesota where people are impersonating police officers, but also in North Dakota. In at least one situation, somebody presenting himself as an ICE officer was able to remove somebody from the Williams County Jail. And so this becomes an extremely serious thing for people of any gender and age group to be able to verify not only the identity of the person or persons that are presenting themselves as an officer of any government agency, from our police department, our sheriff's department, our state patrol, the FBI, the Homeland Security, ICE, IRS, any particular government group. We should have the right to be able to call into dispatch, to be able to request somebody else report in, number one. Number two, if it's a non-emergency situation, that the person be allowed to remain in a public area or go to a public area as long as they're not trying to run, so that they're able to ascertain identities, so that they're able to ascertain whether or not this is a lawful, the person that's doing this is acting within the law, because more than one case we're finding that ignorance of the law is no excuse, only seems to apply to the civilian public. We're finding that qualified immunity is granted carte blanche, and it's in fact hurt not only the trust of the community, but it's enabled these government agencies to engage in false advertising, because qualified immunity means that there is no legal obligation to protect the community in any way. And as somebody who's basically recorded these encounters and followed them for years in the news, I'd like to see to it that we civilians have the protection of not only being able to know the identity of these people, whether or not they're acting within the law, and to be able to ask that in any suspicious circumstances that things be put on hold when it's not an emergency, such as whether or not a person is supposed to be on the property, to be able to go ahead and to call around before something extreme like an arrest takes place, or a person is forced out of a public area when they're not feeling safe with somebody who's essentially a stranger, or when a person has a disability like mine where I cannot remember human faces, or at least is easy, or it takes me a great deal of time to learn them. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in accordance to the law.
We're still in personal appearances. Good evening, ma'am.
My name's Joan Hawbaker. I'd kind of like to respond to her in just that I'm in the medical field, and when I first started 40 plus years ago, we had our first name, last name, our designation, whether we were RN, LPN, whatever we were, on our name tags. That changed because mostly out of the emergency room, people ended up starting getting calls at home. And because most people at that time were listed in the phone book, so you had phone numbers. So we changed to just first names. And in this day and age I realize that there are some in the law enforcement that maybe aren't being held accountable for some actions, but for the most part, most of them are good, decent people. And when they have their first and last name or have to give their first and last name to someone, and I agree, I would like to be able to know for sure that they are police, but I also think giving just a first name would be just fine because of the repercussions of, am I going to start getting phone calls, or am I, whatever, is somebody going to come to my home because they didn't like what I said or did? So I just wanted to say something about medical field versus this, and I see a correlation with giving out personal information. That's all.
Ma'am,
I'd like to request 30 seconds to give an answer to that.
I think you had your 5 minutes, ma'am. I'm not seeing anybody making a motion to extend that. We're still in public appearances. If someone wishes to appear before the council, now is the opportunity. Seeing no one, we will move on. That takes us to Section 10, miscellaneous and discussion items. 10.1, we have a 2024 Airport Pavement Condition Index Study.
Mayor, City Council, every 3 years, the State of North Dakota Aeronautics Commission hires an engineering firm to conduct a pavement condition index study for all the airports within the state. And I have Mr. Jameson here to present or show the tool that Mead and Hunt put together that shows the pavement condition and the forecasted pavement condition for the city of Minot Airport. And what it does is it helps the state and the city also plan for construction costs for maintaining and rehabbing and reconstructing the pavements as needed. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. You should have received from Michaela a copy of kind of an executive summary. What Jameson here is going to be showing is the actual tool on the state's website that you can kind of do a deep dive into the pavement conditions at the airport.
Yes, thank you, Jen. As she said, my name is Jameson Kath. I'm with Mead and Hunt Engineering, and the
Sir,
state.
So, I'm sorry. Do you want to kind of get the mic pointed more toward? Thank you.
Is that better? Thank you. I got it. Thank you.
That thing will go up. There's an arrow right there.
All right. As she said, my name is Jameson Kath of Mead and Hunt, and every 3 years the State Aeronautics Commission puts on this PCI study where they assess all 72 public paved airports in the state, and the PCI data that comes with it is really integral into helping the the individual airports, the Aeronautics Association, and the FAA develop capital improvement programs in an effort to maintain and keep their pavement integrity. And so the PCI is a number, basically 0 to 100, that indicates the condition of the pavement, 0 being completely failed, 100 being great, brand new pavement. And these are assessed based off of visual inspections. So they go out there. We had teams go out to all 72 airports. They visually inspected the pavements for the types of distresses and the quantity of that distresses to come up with the pavement condition index. And so kind of the best way to talk about Minot's specific results is to going into the North Dakota Aeronautics Commission website, going over to studies, down to pavement condition index. Here's just a general overview of PCI. So when you click here, you actually enter into the overall portal, essentially. And I do encourage anybody, if they do have any extra time, to go take a look through here. There's a ton of information on statewide and as well as airport, individual airports. And so when you go into airport details, you can go over here and click on Minot or find them over in the scroll bar. And then basically off to the right is kind of all of the information that's gathered for as part of the PCI study. So Minot consists of just under 5 million square feet of pavement, asphalt and concrete. And as an overall area-weighted PCI, they had a PCI of 78 this year. That's up 4 points from 2021, and that is actually right on par with the average across the state for commercial service airports. And kind of going into a more in-depth view of things, you can go into branch or even section view. Branch view is just kind of a color-coded map that shows the that just visually shows the pavement condition index of various components of the airfield: primary runway, crosswind runway, various taxiways. And then even breaking it down even further into section level view, you can see kind of where all the individual sections ranged from 35 all the way up to 100 in the recent PCI study. So then off to the right is all sorts of different tabs. Inventory tab and work history is where you can go in and see exactly where and when a piece of pavement was constructed and what it was constructed out of. And that really helps us as engineers to see what's out there and see how the pavement is performing over time. In the inspection tab, you can see where they noted any distresses and what those distresses were for any individual pavement section. It kind of highlights there and shows up. And then likewise, any photos. So if they did find any pertinent distress photos, they have those kind of, as you click through, they'll go and see kind of where they were taken at and what distresses they were out there. Summary charts, basically just an overview of the square footage by use, PCI area by surface type, and PCI by branch use. So basically, all apron pavements at the airport area weighted was a 80 this year. All the runway pavements area weighted by use was an 80 as well. Taxi was the 73, and the T-hanger pavements, which is essentially just the pavement up to the northwest that services the GA hangar development, was 100 as it was recently constructed. And then the recommended work is basically, as part of the study, a 5-year funding plan. If all unlimited funding was available, how much would potentially how much would be needed to bring up all of the pavements across the state up to their critical PCI value? It's a planning level tool that really just helps the FAA and the state to see kind of when they would maybe need, or when they would maybe be asked by airports for their funding participation. And then the last thing I wanted to talk through is the documents here. Kind of as Jen noted, you can click into the 2024 and you can see the PDF version of that document where it goes into more detail on the overall study, more breakouts on PCI for Minot in general, and then the recommended 5-year work plan, as well as an overall just 2024 PCI map. And again, this is just a kind of a tool that we use as engineers to just really make sure that what we are looking at as far as projects and prioritizing of construction projects, that we are really making sure that we're getting the best bang for your buck when it comes to construction projects moving forward. So I can continue to go through any more questions if there are any, or otherwise.
Okay. Are there any questions on the airport pavement study? City manager?
Just real quick, a little obscure, but something I noticed when you're going through. If you go back to the first screen you brought up that compared the different conditions of all the cities and airports. So go back to the Minot one. So it brings up the Minot in your table over to the right. I was a little curious about, so you see Minot's there, and it holds pretty steady from 2018 to 21 to 24. Slight improvement. But Napoleon starts out at 93 in 2018 and then drops to 79. Is there an explanation for why their condition is decreasing where ours maintains steady? I'm wondering if that's an issue of, are we doing a good job of maintaining so it doesn't deteriorate as quickly? Or maybe I'm asking an obscure question that you may not be able to answer.
Oh, so the PCI is really dependent on pavement maintenance and preventative maintenance, et cetera. Also, PCI can be adjusted based off of, or can be skewed based off of recently constructed pavement. So Napoleon may have had, I can't speak to them because I'm not too familiar with what actually happened out there, but they may have just had distresses such as asphalt weathering and raveling that were really deducting their PCI, and that's a really common distress that we see here in North Dakota. But they also could have done a preventative maintenance on that to maybe maintain it. But the the airport here in Minot, they have recently constructed some taxiways, which are considered a PCI of 100. They also continue to do preventative maintenance as well as just general work around the airfield to keep their PCIs kind of at that, at the relatively the same level there. So.
Thank you.
So these numbers are an aggregate or sort of an average or, compilation of all of the pieces that,
Correct. It's an area weighted for the overall network level PCI. It's an area weighted of all the pavements, all the airfield pavements out there, and then divided by their area to equal out the area weighted average.
thank you. Any other questions on the pavement study? Okay, sir, seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate the information. Next item is item 10.2. This is another informational item, and Chief Kelly is coming to talk about staffing for adequate fire and emergency response.
Hello, Mayor, members of council. I was here in the fall and I got approval for us to write a SAFER grant. It was delayed by many, many months and it just came out, and the new criteria, which has never been done before, has a cost share to the city, 25% the first 2 years and 65% the third year. So I wanted to update you on that. There will be a cost to the city for that. We are going to be putting in the grant, and it is due July 3rd. So just so you guys are all aware. Questions?
So, Chief Kelly, I guess, do you know what that 25% would amount to based on what I don't know if there were previous estimates on what the entire grant we were applying for would be, but do you have a number of that?
Yes, Mayor, members of council, it is in the memo. The first year, the match would be about $124,000. Second year is $131,000, and third year would be $362,000.
Okay. Any questions for the chief? Olson.
Thank you. And just a reminder, Chief Kelly, do you feel confident that we will receive the grant, or is it still a little bit of a question mark on whether or not we would receive it?
Mayor, Alderman Olson, we have Lexipol assisting us in writing this grant, and they're pretty confident in our ability to get it based on how they've done them before. So I'm more confident with them writing it than myself, for sure.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. Chief, a couple quick questions, I guess, I'm looking at this. One, I thought when we talked about this, and I could be totally wrong, but I thought we were starting with 3 firefighters and not 6. Am I mistaken in that, or did we change it somewhere and I just missed it?
Mayor, Alderman Fuller, we had talked through different scenarios, and 6 was the number that we'd come up with.
Okay. I guess my question here, more than anything, is when we looked at this originally, and Alderman Blessum said it, we were setting up for, okay, we got 3 years of free, and then it's going to be big. And now, over the course of those 3 years, we're going to have to basically pay $619,000 of the $1.5 million in rough salaries that are going to be out there. Boy, that's tough. I mean, we're building a budget backwards, kind of, right? I mean, we haven't had this in the budget. Now we got to add it to the budget. To me, that's really tough. It doesn't feel like we're being fiscally responsible because we don't even have a funding source for it yet, right? We haven't identified where the funds are going to come from to pay for these firefighters. So I have a hard time with this. I mean, I know you guys are in need of help over there, but this one to me, and I realize it isn't your guys' fault. I mean, they totally changed the program on you before you were able to send in the money, but I'm probably going to be a no on this just because of the cost.
So a point of clarification, if I could. So where we sit today, we have an authorization from the last motion that was approved. So for me, this is a courtesy that the chief and Harold have brought back to us because they actually wouldn't need to. It's a good thing you did because it changes things quite a bit. So I appreciate that very much. So just to clarify though, if we take no action, that authorization would stand. Is that everybody's understanding, even though the dollars change? We would have to prove a budget amendment, which is a different motion, correct?
Mr. Mayor, if I'm,
Yes. Yep, it would be a separate motion that would need to be made.
Mr. Mayor,
City
if I
Attorney?
may.
Oh, I don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, City Manager.
My understanding is we would apply for it. So you've given us authorization to apply for it. But if we were received it, it would come back for council action on whether or not you wanted to proceed. So the council isn't locked in to this decision, even though the terms have changed. That being said, though, having sat through several budget meetings here over the last couple weeks, squeezing this into the future budgets is not going to be easy. And as a city manager, even though I've advocated strongly for the fire department and through the CPSM study that we need to increase our staffing for our fire department, financially, I don't know how feasible it is at this point. And I would rather not take the SAFER grant and add these 6 positions than to start talking about elimination of already funded positions within our department. So those are things that we're going to have to work on. I agree with Alderman Fuller with his points because I've been of the same mindset here over the last couple of weeks. Financially, this budget is going to be difficult. There's some pruning that's coming, and we have some tough decisions to make, and the impacts that that's going to have. I will continue to advocate on behalf of public safety. I believe those are core services that we provide as a community. Police, fire, streets are core services, but we have to deal with budget reality as well. And I don't know that this will stay in my city manager recommended budget.
Alderman Blessum.
If I continue, so I guess that's the part that gets difficult for me. So just a question, Chief. If we authorize going forward and finishing the grant and getting it in, is this one of those where it doesn't, reflect particularly well if we don't even take it once we've asked for it? Are we better off waiting around when budget pressures may be different than they are today? Is there any thought to any of that? Is there a consequence to going after the grant and then not taking it?
Mayor, Alderman Blessum, I would think that would happen once in a while. I mean, financial stability within a community, it changes with the economy and different things like that. So I would assume that we wouldn't be the first one. I've never heard of it, but I really don't pay attention to all the communities. I don't think it would be reflected poorly. I think it would be reflected that we're being responsible because we just can't afford it at this time.
And if I can continue, if I remember right, there was a cost associated with getting the grant prepared. And so what do we have into it at this point, or what have we spent so far?
Mayor, Alderman Blessum, I think we had a contract for like $7,500 for the Lexapol to write it.
Yeah, and I think based off some numbers I heard this morning talking with the finance director, I think we have about 4,000 into it at this point.
Alderman Olson.
Yeah, thank you. Another question. So if when we were approved for 6, and the discussion came to, well, we think we could afford 3, would there be some flexibility within that grant to say that we could accept a portion of the funds and not the whole amount?
Mayor, Alderman Olson, I would believe that we could. Harold, maybe you could, have you ever had that experience at all with other?
At this point, we haven't submitted the application, correct? So we can submit the application on whatever parameters we deem necessary. But I can tell you, looking at the finances for the budgets in 2026, 27, and 28, it's even at 3, it's going to be difficult to put it in.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Go ahead, Alderman Blessum.
I think what we're hearing a little bit here, we've heard a little bit from what Harold's saying, and that's the realities we've got. At this point, we're in a little bit of a funny flux with how the president of the council is sitting. So Mark and as vice president, you guys will have your priorities for what may come through that as well. I guess my question is right now for the council, if the city manager isn't intending to include it, unless the two of you feel that it's a priority that steps beyond that, I feel like right now the direction is this isn't the time. And I think we're in a spot where we've got to let this process continue and deal with the budget realities that we've got in front of us, and then, we readdress it down the road.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I'll ask you the same question I asked before. With or without this grant, what is your priority when it comes to the fire department? Is it Station 6? Is it fully staffing personnel? Is it new equipment? What is the number one priority? And will new firefighters be a priority in those future budgets enough to include them?
Mayor, Alderman Pittner, thank you for putting me on the spot. One, we have to get southern protection. We need to get to the south a little bit more. Will that include added staff? It doesn't need to. That big thing is moving Station 1 down and trying to reorganize the city a little bit so we can better serve the public down in the south end. So.
Any other questions? Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we direct the city manager and the chief to actually not submit the SAFER grant at this time.
I'll second.
Discussion. Alderman Pittner.
Just a question maybe for the city manager. When you say you can change the parameters of what would you have in mind? Would you have it in mind for 1, 2, 3 firefighters? Is that possible?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Pittner. So our fire departments are a little bit different in the fact that we're scheduling shifts. So anytime you add a position, you're not just adding one, you're adding pretty much 3 at a time. So they come in groups of 3, 6, 9, 12. I'll rely on Chief Kelly's assessment of her priorities. But again, I'll state that based off of the CPSM study and based off of what I know with regards to NFPA standards and our call volume and our continued increasing percentage of second calls needing to respond to while we're responding to one, we are running to a point where staffing is an issue. And it's going to begin affecting ISO ratings and all those kinds of things. We have great staff that do a great job. But we're going to run to a point here soon that we're not going to have enough of them to do it as safely as they should be doing it. And I would hate to put them in that type of position. So it's going to be a balance, and ultimately it's Chief Kelly's decision on whether a relocation of a facility is a higher priority than additional staffing. In my mind, they're probably both equally important, but we have to deal with the financial constraints that we have. So I would find it, the SAFER grants come around, technically speaking, every year. You have the opportunity to apply for them every year, so it's not like you pull out now and you're not going to be able to do it again next year or some other year in the future, although the federal funding the landscape of that is changing significantly. I think they're even a bit behind. I don't even know if we're applying for 2025 funds, are we? Are we applying for 24 or 23 funds with this grant? Some of these were behind due to delays on the federal government and sequestration and those kinds of things. So we're behind even on the funds that are being provided. So I guess my main point there is that I don't know that you can do less than 3, and you're gonna have to do them in increments of 3. And 2 is you'll have other opportunities to apply for these grant fundings if we get to a point that financially we think we can make it work.
Alderman Olson.
Thank you. I have a little heartburn. When I saw this on the agenda, I too was kind of shocked and saddened that this was a situation. But pulling it now, when we have not seen the budget and we have not had the opportunity to discuss the budget, seems a little premature. And I don't know what the timeline is. I believe you said, Chief Kelly, it's due early July?
Mayor Alderman Olson, July 3rd.
And do you know when we would have an answer?
I do not. I'm so sorry. I just never know.
I guess my gut feeling is to vote no on this motion and to get a little bit more information, because for me, emergency services does rise to the top. And as we're having those budget discussions, we might determine that hiring 3 additional firefighters is the right decision. I don't know at this point, but until we have more definitive information and have had in-depth discussions, I'm not ready to vote no on it.
Further discussion? Alderman Blessum.
Yep, thank you. I guess just to put it in perspective for everybody, what the city manager is facing in this year's budget with the action that the state legislature took, we can take about a 3% increase in our property tax levy. So all of the things being equal, the idea that maybe we don't use, reserves and all the pieces that we've talked about over the previous months, assuming that that number goes forward, that's $750,000 roughly that we could increase this year's budget. So this alone this year is $125,000 of that. That's a pretty significant bite out of that increased pie. And that's before we even consider what happens in years 2, 3, 4, and on down the road. And in my mind, what that's doing is it's asking every other department head to say, you got to get by not just with your share of the 3% increase, but actually you're closer to zero because we have priorities that are higher. I raised this when this first came up, that if we head down this path, we are saying this is that priority and we're going to have to find somewhere else that gets by without. That's what this still is. This is, in fact, it's much worse now with the local share. So that's the issue that we've got in front of us. I would urge us to go ahead and let this go by the wayside now, and we've got future rounds to look at if we need them.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the. I'm sorry.
No,
Alderman Pittner.
again, I kind of agree with everybody. I don't think this is, we had a coupon for free for 3 years, and now it's 25%, so it changes the equation here. And when we talked about setting budget priorities previously, we talked about, taking care of employees and wages and benefits as taking care of the people that we have. So, if I look at this, I see maybe, like you say, you cut into that the ability to take care of the people that are already here versus 3 or 6 people that might be coming on board. So, again, it's not a fun situation to be in, but it's reality. So,
Further discussion? Seeing none, time to vote on the motion. Everybody understand what the motion is?
The motion passed 4-2 with dissents from Olson and Janser.
Very well. And that takes us to item 11, which is liaison reports. Let me start with Alderman Fuller.
Sure. Mine's pretty quick. I was gone most of the month, so the only one I was able to get to was the library board meeting. Good meeting. We're discussing budget items and stuff like that right now. So, and they're looking at the renovations that have been proposed through the study that we had put together.
Thank you. Alderman Samuelson.
Had the canvassing board this morning. Nothing changed on the vote there. And Ward County Planning is this Thursday evening.
Okay. My items were covered in the mayor's report. Alderman Pittner.
thank you, Mr. Janser, Mayor Janser. Renaissance Zone, I missed that one due to a conflict with transit budget meeting. Sat on the police chief interview panel. Economic Development Review, we meet this Friday. Visit Minot. Again, continuing the good work there. Had a meet and greet social with kind of an exciting group that will be coming to Minot next August of 2026. It'll be 1,200 units of Airstream units. They're renting the fairgrounds out for two full weeks, 1 week for setup and then 1 week for their rally, about 2,500 people. And just want to give a shout out to Steph Shanerock at Visit Minot because they were very clear that she is the reason they are here due to her hard work and the work of the Visit Minot board. Again, first Airstream rally in Minot, they will come here. There'll be volunteer activities. They're going to be going out to Devil's Lake, going to surrounding communities, finding ways to volunteer, soup kitchen, things like that. So again, very exciting for any small business owner, a time to kind of show off to people from all around the country.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Alderman Blessum.
Yeah, as Paul mentioned, economic development, we have a meeting this Friday. Hopefully, we're coming to the end. We'll be close. We'll see where we're at. Hopefully, we'll be there, but we'll bring back recommendations to council at that point. Commission on Aging, we're sort of between. That's coming this Friday as well. 911 committee, we actually had a little more interest and action in the meeting last Thursday. So Did a couple things related to reserve levels in the 911 budgets and making sure that we're keeping an appropriate amount of money in that world. And then also some requests that are lined up with city budget side related to dispatch and both some software for giving feedback to agents, as well as some dollars for quiet room to sort of re-energize after a tougher call. The committee gave some approval for that, but also there's budget constraints, so that it's got to go through the city side of the budget as well. So, yeah, I think that's the keys for now.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Olson.
Prior to my liaison report, I want to take a moment of personal privilege and just comment on some of the things that were mentioned during personal appearances. I think that we all saw the heinous, horrendous act that happened in Minnesota, where 2 Minnesota state legislators and their spouses were shot, and 2 of them fatally. And to insinuate that law enforcement was somehow involved in that because this very vile person chose to put on a police uniform and commit this heinous crime, they're not connected. And, I hope that there is some sort of justice for those that have been impacted by this, but to make an insinuation that because someone was wearing a uniform, that they were taking advantage of their authority is absolutely incorrect. My liaison report on May 28th and 30th, I participated in the Finance Department's RFQ for an auditing firm, and we took action on that earlier this evening. June 9th, attended the neighborhood meeting that dealt with road construction updates. On the 10th, attended the Service Basin Planning Council Executive Board meeting, and as Alderman Samuelson already indicated, he and Alderman Blessum and myself participated in the canvassing board. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 12.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.